The Earth's climate is changing, and nowhere is this more evident than in Bangladesh. Nestled at the confluence of mighty rivers and bordering the Bay of Bengal, Bangladesh is a land of vibrant life and rich culture. Yet this nation of 165 million people finds itself on the front lines of a crisis not of its making. Its very existence is threatened by the rising tides and the changing climate. Join me as we journey to the heart of this unfolding crisis, exploring the profound impacts of climate change on Bangladesh and its people. We'll witness the challenges they face and the resilience they embody in the face of an uncertain future. Here's an overview of the major impacts of climate change in Bangladesh. Our journey begins on the low-lying coastal plains of southern Bangladesh, a region home to millions who have lived in harmony with the sea for generations. But the sea, once a source of sustenance, is now encroaching upon their existence. As global temperatures rise, glaciers melt, causing sea levels to rise. For Bangladesh, this means a relentless advance of salt water into its coastal areas. Scientists predict that by 2050, as much as 20% of Bangladesh could be submerged. Imagine entire villages swallowed by the sea, ancestral lands lost forever. Crops wither and die as salt water infiltrates the soil, poisoning the land. Families are forced to abandon their homes, becoming climate refugees. The intrusion of salt water is contaminating freshwater sources, turning wells brackish. This scarcity of clean drinking water poses a severe threat to human health. The Bay of Bengal, a body of water that has long been a source of life for Bangladesh, is now becoming a breeding ground for increasingly powerful and destructive cyclones. Warmer ocean temperatures fuel these storms, making them more intense and unpredictable. For the people of Bangladesh, the names of these cyclones, Cedar, Aila, Amphan, evoke memories of terror and devastation. These storms, once a generational occurrence, are now becoming more frequent, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Imagine the howling winds, reaching speeds of over 150 miles per hour, tearing through villages, ripping apart homes and uprooting trees. The sky darkens as walls of water, driven by the fury of the cyclone, surge inland, engulfing everything in their path. The low-lying terrain offers little resistance, allowing the water to penetrate deep inland, flooding vast areas. Homes are reduced to rubble, crops are destroyed, and vital infrastructure is crippled. Thousands of lives lost, millions displaced, and livelihoods shattered. Bangladesh is a land woven together by a network of mighty rivers, the Ganges, the Brahmaputra, and the Meghna. These rivers, the lifeblood of the country, are also susceptible to the impacts of climate change. As Himalayan glaciers melt, the volume of water flowing down these rivers increases dramatically during the monsoon season. Coupled with heavier rainfall, this leads to widespread and devastating floods. Imagine the relentless downpour, day after day, saturating the ground until the rivers overflowed their banks. The floodwaters spread across the land, engulfing villages, towns, and even parts of Dhaka. Homes are inundated, crops are submerged, and livelihoods are washed away. Poor drainage systems in urban areas turn streets into rivers and homes into islands. The lack of proper sanitation leads to the spread of waterborne diseases, posing a serious threat to public health. The long and arduous task of rebuilding begins, but for many, the cycle of flooding and displacement continues. While rising sea levels and floods threaten to inundate Bangladesh, another consequence of climate change is taking hold: a growing scarcity of fresh water. As temperatures rise, rainfall patterns are becoming more erratic, leading to prolonged periods of drought in certain regions. In the northern and northwestern parts of the country, once fertile farmland is turning into arid wasteland. The scorching sun bakes the earth, cracking the soil and withering crops. Rivers and ponds are drying up, leaving behind parched riverbeds and desperate communities. The lack of water for irrigation means failed harvests, leading to food shortages and economic hardship. Access to clean drinking water becomes a daily struggle, leading to dehydration and waterborne diseases. Communities are forced to walk miles to fetch water from distant sources, adding to their already heavy burden. The elderly and the vulnerable are at the highest risk, suffering from heat stroke and other heat-related illnesses. Agriculture, the backbone of Bangladesh's economy, is facing an unprecedented challenge as climate change disrupts traditional farming practices and threatens food security for millions. The delicate balance of Bangladesh's agricultural system, reliant on predictable monsoon rains and fertile land, is being upset by changing weather patterns, rising sea levels, and extreme weather events. Saltwater intrusion is rendering once fertile land barren, poisoning the soil and killing crops. Rice, the staple food of Bangladesh, is particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Farmers are struggling to adapt, experimenting with salt-tolerant varieties of rice and changing planting cycles, but the challenges are immense. The very livelihoods of millions of farmers are at stake, as are the food security and economic stability of the nation. The impacts of climate change are forcing a mass exodus from rural areas as people flee their homes in search of safety and a more secure future. This displacement is creating a new generation of climate refugees, adding to the already immense pressure on urban centers. Imagine the heartbreak of leaving behind your ancestral home, the land that has sustained your family for generations, swallowed by the sea or rendered uninhabitable by floods and droughts. Driven by desperation, families pack their meager belongings and embark on perilous journeys to the sprawling slums of Dhaka and other major cities. They arrive in unfamiliar surroundings, seeking shelter and opportunity, but often facing further hardship. The influx of climate refugees puts immense pressure on already strained urban infrastructure and services. Housing is scarce and often inadequate, sanitation is poor, and competition for jobs is fierce. On the southern edge of Bangladesh lies a magical realm, a world of tangled roots, shimmering waterways, and a symphony of life. The Sundarbans, the largest mangrove forest on Earth. But even this natural wonder is not immune to the impacts of climate change. Saltwater intrusion is killing trees, eroding coastlines, and altering the delicate balance of this unique environment. The iconic Royal Bengal tiger, the Sundarbans' most famous resident, is facing a shrinking habitat and dwindling prey. As the forest shrinks, tigers are forced into closer contact with humans, leading to conflicts and further endangering this magnificent creature. The loss of the Sundarbans would be a tragedy, not just for Bangladesh, but for the entire world. This unique ecosystem plays a vital role in mitigating climate change, acting as a carbon sink and protecting coastlines from erosion. Climate change is not just an environmental crisis, it's a health crisis. The changing climate is exacerbating existing health risks and creating new and unprecedented challenges for the people of Bangladesh. As temperatures rise and rainfall patterns shift, the spread of infectious diseases such as dengue fever, malaria and cholera is increasing. Floods create breeding grounds for disease-carrying mosquitoes, while contaminated water sources spread waterborne illnesses. The healthcare system, already strained, is struggling to cope with the increasing burden of climate-related illnesses. Hospitals are overwhelmed, resources are scarce, and access to quality healthcare, particularly in rural areas, remains a challenge. The trauma of displacement, the loss of livelihoods, and the constant threat of future disasters are leaving deep psychological scars on individuals and communities. The economic cost of climate change is already being felt across Bangladesh, and the price tag is staggering. The World Bank estimates that climate change could cost Bangladesh 2% of its GDP annually by 2050. Imagine the impact on a nation striving for economic development, its progress hampered by the constant threat of climate-related disasters. The cost of rebuilding after cyclones, floods and droughts is draining resources and hindering growth. The agricultural sector, the backbone of the economy, is facing billions of dollars in losses due to crop damage, livestock deaths, and reduced yields. The government is investing heavily in disaster preparedness and climate change adaptation measures, but the scale of the challenge is immense. International support is crucial to help Bangladesh cope with the economic burden of climate change. The challenges facing Bangladesh are a stark reminder that climate change is a global crisis requiring a global response. While Bangladesh is on the front lines, the impacts of climate change will be felt by all nations, rich and poor alike. The people of Bangladesh, despite their vulnerability, are not passive victims. They are demonstrating remarkable resilience and innovation in adapting to the changing climate and finding solutions to the challenges they face. From building cyclone shelters and early warning systems to developing salt-tolerant crops and floating gardens, Bangladeshis are adapting to their changing environment. International cooperation and support are crucial to help Bangladesh adapt to the impacts of climate change and pursue a sustainable future. By working together, we can build a more just and sustainable future for all. As our journey through Bangladesh's climate crisis comes to an end, we are left with a profound sense of urgency and a call to action. The challenges facing Bangladesh are a stark reminder that climate change is not a distant threat. It is a present reality with devastating consequences. The time for complacency is long gone. We must act now with determination and compassion to address this global crisis before it's too late. Let us rise to the challenge together and create a more just and sustainable world for generations to come.